Dr. James Bauer. Dr. Bauer, he is our keynote speaker this evening, and Dr. Bauer is a professor of computational neuroscience at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio and at the University of Texas, San Antonio. Prior to that, he was a professor at the California Institute of Technology for 17 years. His scientific research focuses on the cerebellum and the mammalian olfactory system, and mine's on the amphibian olfactory system, so we'll get together later, my research, and we'll compare what we've come up with. He has published more than 100 scientific articles and has authored several books. He received his PhD in neurophysiology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In 2000, Dr. Bauer and several of his colleagues at the California Institute of Technology developed one of the first 3D virtual worlds, Whyville.net, which is still the only virtual world focused on education. Whyville has more than 3 million registered users and has been the recipient of several grants by the Texas Workforce Commission, specifically to introduce middle school children to a variety of careers in Texas, including biotechnology, manufacturing, aeronautics, and robotics. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker this evening, Dr. James Bauer.
I've attended groups of faculty who voted for a long time. I think this is the first time I've actually seen a unanimous positive vote by any group of faculty on anything. You guys are strange. Also, I should tell you that a little bit in line with the presentation by the student, when I was a difficult high school student, that was before I became a difficult faculty member, one of the ways this school decided to deal with me was to actually push me off to Monroe Community College in Rochester, New York. So it was great for them because I didn't have to be in the high school anymore. And it was great for me because I actually got to be exposed to higher education at a fairly young age. And I guess it goes without saying that I probably wouldn't have pursued a career in higher education if that hadn't been a good experience. That's the upside. When I was at Caltech, actually, some of you may or may not know that one of the largest community colleges in the country, Pasadena Community College, is right next door to Caltech, which Caltech largely ignores. In fact, many of them just regard that institution as having lots of students that steal their parking places. But while I was at Caltech, actually, I had a fair amount to do with Pasadena Community College. That's all the good stuff. I have to mention, sort of in honesty and fairness and whatever, that my ex-mother-in-law was also a professor at a community college in Multnomah Community College in Portland, Oregon, so that's the downside. But generally speaking, my experience with the community colleges and their professors have been very good. Okay, so I should also tell you that I was in the lobby waiting for my room to be ready this afternoon, sitting in the bar, and sitting next to me were two members of your august organization who were having a conversation about the fact that they hoped that this year's keynote speaker would end sometime before 10. They also hoped that the presentation would be relevant in some way, and that rang a bell because I've received 2 or 3 phone calls from the organizers of this meeting over the last month or so, specifically emphasizing the fact that I should be relevant. Anyway, so I'm going to try to both be brief and relevant, and we'll see. Oh, I was also told, by the way, they used to have comedians. And I was thinking, I only know a couple of jokes, neither one of which I would have told my community college professors when I was in high school, and I'm not going to try now. This is something I know and I really believe. And you guys all know, it amazes me that other people in higher education don't realize it. I mean, the work that you guys do and the importance of the community college system in this country for education is phenomenal. At UTSA, okay, how many actually here from the Alamo area community college? I can't see a thing, but I believe you're out there. There you go. Good. I should have worn a hat, actually. There you are. So at UTSA, I won't tell you because it's depressing, actually, how many of the students that come in as freshmen actually matriculate from the college, UTSA. It's disturbingly low. Depending on who you ask, it approaches or is in the single digits. Okay? Now, that's not fair because a lot of them get robbed by the local community colleges after the first term or two, as we already heard. The amazing thing is that most of the kids that graduate from UTSA are actually kids that have transferred from community colleges. Okay? I mean, you guys know that. My colleagues at UTSA don't like to talk about it. Okay, but it's just kind of the truth. And it reflects a lot of funny things about our educational system, not the least of which is that it's not in great shape. And it's not in great shape prior to you a lot. High schools, middle schools, elementary schools. And I just want to say, as a famous old expression, you know, vote early and often. It's really important. Things are going to change. They have to change. But we have to change them. It's the educated people that have to change them. Okay, if you don't vote, you're making a decision that someone else is going to do it. Okay, so community colleges are extremely important. I know that. I also know you're sort of in this funny position, stealing Caltech's parking spaces on the one hand and educating thousands and thousands of kids, giving them a chance, all ages, all nationalities, all abilities to speak English on the other hand. But there's a crisis in the country which has only gotten worse in the last 7 years. I do a lot of international travel. I do a lot of international consulting. I've been spending a lot of time recently in Spain talking to entrepreneurs there. The United States is actually in deep trouble with respect to our workforce. No question about it. Okay? This is a quote from a commission 2006. Some of you may have seen this quote before. Let me just read it. There's a story about the big public conversation this nation is not having about education. Whether an entire generation of kids will fail to make the grade in its global economy because they can't think their way through abstract problems, work in teams, and distinguish good information from bad. By the way, actually, the same thing was true in high school, which is why I got in trouble. It's only gotten worse with time. I don't pull punches. Okay, I call it the way I see it. I think the experiment we've been doing in public education for the last 7 years has been devastating. And if we keep doing it, it's going to get worse. In fact, it isn't even really an experiment. It's just an effort for certain people to keep making money off of public education. So, like I said, I say what I think. This actually, I talked last summer, I think, at the NCATC meeting, and I quoted from one of their board members, which is really, there's really no shortage of young people with the skills and abilities to step in and take over. I mean, the reason we have a workforce problem in the United States and an educational problem in the United States is not because of the raw material. I'm a neurobiologist. You know, I know human brains are amazing. It's not the raw material, it's something else. There's a shortage of opportunities for them to hone their skills and show what they can do. As a Caltech professor, I often would get, because I did a lot of work with education, I would get invited to talk like to Rotary clubs and Lions clubs and Young Republican clubs. And they assumed that because I was a Caltech professor that I would say certain things. And one of the questions that I was asked all the time was, what we can do about public education? I said, it's simple. You increase the budget. Okay? And inevitably they raise their hand and say, but they waste so much money. I said, well, in the first place, they don't. You've been sold a line of goods. But the second thing is, what's the appropriate response to them waste? Let's say they waste 50% of the money. What's the appropriate response? You double the budget. These are our children. This is our future. We're primates. We believe in education. We have big brains. We got to feed it. You double the budget. Simple solution. I usually get invited back to any of those. I know, and I know in my own community well, and I know in other communities around the country, as was said earlier, and you guys know it's true, community colleges are remarkably responsive as organizations to the needs of the community. I mean, it's interesting, when people in Pasadena wanted to do something about public education, wanted to do something about workforce, wanted to do something about security, they didn't go to Caltech. They went to, PCC. I know there are programs, you guys run these programs, you're involved in these programs which are trying to do something about this. There's some very interesting ones you probably know about in San Antonio. There's a federation basically between the Alamo Community College system and the high schools to actually build these academies. Okay, there are 3 of them currently and others in planning. There's the Alamo Area Aerospace Academy, the Information Technology and Security Academy, and the Manufactured Technology Academy. Take just the Aerospace Academy. It's related to a clear need in San Antonio to support the aerospace industry. I know Waco has a similar interest. And here are the people that are involved, and nobody I notice from UTSA or from UT. But anyway, these are the people that are involved in running the Aerospace Academy. And the others, this is the world you live in. And it's been quite successful. This is actually sort of some data from one of these academies and this is a dual accreditation academy so that you get accredited in high school as well as a community college. But here's the problem, okay? All these academies are about half their capacity. Okay? Where are the students? How do you engage them? Why aren't they here? These kids coming out of this academy, average salary out of the academy is $26,000 a year. That's not a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a kid with a high school diploma, and it's a lot of money for kids in San Antonio. So why isn't it full and overfull? I actually stole this off your website. I think it's a great quote. I think there's something more important than believing: action. The world is full of dreamers. I've been accused of that many times. There aren't enough who will move ahead and begin to take concrete steps. Okay? But here's this problem. Great program, not enough kids in it. What's the solution? You got to go get them. Where do you get them? Not in high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. Okay, I'm a neurobiologist. I know what happens in the brain. I mean, we have examples of it occurring right in front of us at the table, actually, tonight. When kids are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's when you have to intervene. That's when you have to have something that engages kids. It was for this reason, in large part, that in 1999, we decided to, in some ways, take an end run around the educational system by launching a virtual world. At the time, they weren't called virtual worlds. That's when you know you've actually accomplished something, when later on they named something you did a long time ago. Anyway, we launched one of the first virtual worlds, in fact, the first virtual world on the internet for children. How many of you know what a virtual world is?